Hi, this is Adam Bolshaw, the Real Property Guy. You're joining me on my podcast. Today with me in the studio is Todd Asplin with Geneva Financial. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. I enjoyed doing this.
How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. Pretty good. Trying to get those last days of summer in. School's coming back, the whole 9 yards. So
Don't remind me.
yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It just seemed like first day of summer was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
right?
I know. And the older I get, the worse winter gets. So I really like
let's not talk about
spring,
age.
summer. Yeah. Yeah.
We're not here to talk about our age. Nope. So, today we're discussing, or we're chatting about some of the new changes that came about.
New changes on your side of things
they're
for once,
mostly
not the
on
mortgage side. It's always, they're changing stuff up on us, closing disclosures and loan estimates. So finally
I
something
miss
in
the
the
good
real
old
estate
days
kind.
when they're more focused on the lenders.
Yeah. Yep. Finally, they're getting the realtors.
I know, right?
But yeah, a very interesting topic. It's something that I
Very.
think everybody needs to know and understand because it's a different way of doing business, right, for real estate agents.
For us, yes. Maryland, not so much, but overall across the country, because this is new rules and regulations that are being handed down across the entire country. So nobody is exempt from this.
Yeah, nobody's exempt. And why are we doing it? Why are they doing it? Why is there new rules? Why does there have to be something done with the contract?
In a nutshell, I think the government just thought that we could be doing a far better job of explaining the process and disclosing certain things. The focus seems to have been mostly on the compensation piece, how a real estate agent's compensated inside a transaction, and really that is kind of a cornerstone concept in these contracts, in these sale contracts for purchase of real estate, is disclosures. Just everything. Like when I'm going over some of these things, I mean, they'll like give different iterations of the exact same thing in the contract like 5 different times.
Right.
And you start seeing the buyers and the sellers, their eyes are glazing over it because they're like, Jesus, we got to listen to this again. And it is. And I explained to them, it's like, it's in an overabundance of an attempt to disclose everything. Like when I train my guys, it's like, look, it's disclose. And after you've disclose that you've disclosed it, make a note that you disclosed it, and then disclose that you made a note about the disclosure of the disclosure. And it's just, you just can't disclose enough.
Right.
It's something that protects the consumer. It also protects the real estate agents. A lot of agents are a little nervous with what's changing.
Well, it's a different way to interact with a buyer or a seller when you initially meet them and you're talking over what your strategies are and actually taking somebody out to a property. It's a different way of communicating and getting through the process. So what's changed on your end of things as far as how you're going to do business?
So the big thing is it's mandated that we have to have a buyer agency agreement in place before we can even show a house. So this is where it kind of gets a little off the rails for the consumer because they're going to come to us and they're like, buddy, I don't know you from a hole in the ground. And completely agree. At the end of the day, when I take my real estate hat off, which is only when I shut my eyes at night.
I was going to say, it's not often, right? It's 24/7. You're getting calls all the time.
Wait a second. No, that doesn't happen. Maybe when I shut my eyes to go to sleep. But I'm at the end of the day, I'm a consumer like anyone else. I have very similar expectations, likes, dislikes, in various interactions with various entities, businesses, that kind of thing. So I completely agree. It is going to be a hurdle for the consumer base to kind of get their heads wrapped around that. Okay, this is a thing, and it's not going anywhere. And now I can't see a house unless I have a buyer agency agreement in place. Before we had it's kind of a go-between. It wasn't great, but it was a go-between document. And on the top of the document, it specifically said, this is not a contract. It was just, again, it was a big disclosure on who an agent is, who they represent, buyer side, seller side. So you were able to utilize that document to kind of get over the initial hurdle of that initial meeting, which COVID really brought about kind of I don't know, it's almost a laziness where we got away from doing buyer consultations,
Right.
and just slid right into COVID. No contact, 6 feet apart, all that kind of thing. Really shifted the way we did it. So now it's just like, okay, quick, we're just going to meet at the property. So like I can't remember the last time I actually drove a client, in my car,
Right.
to go
Yeah.
view properties or anything. It's always meet at the property. And we'll just so I think we're shifting back in time a little bit. I think that buyer consultation is going to be a more staple to utilize to help folks get over that hurdle. But no, back to the understanding whom an agent represents, that document, where I could set up an appointment to show a house. I'd bring that document filled out per the customer, because at this point they're not clients. They're just a customer. I shouldn't say just a customer. They're a customer. And in that environment there, I let them know that, this is what an agent is, who an agent is. And in most cases, a lot of people kind of have a pretty good idea. But I think the most common thing that they don't understand is that when I'm walking that door with them, I don't represent that buyer.
Who are you representing at that point before any contract signing?
I'm representing the seller. I'm technically a sub-agent of the seller.
Mm-hmm.
So my loyalties or my duty is to the seller in that case. So it's very much like going to court and not having an attorney present to help defend you.
Right.
And it's kind of in those situations especially when, because I know that a lot of buyers like to just go to they want no fuss. They just want to go to maybe do an open house. Well, in that situation, the same thing. That listing agent, that open house doesn't represent you. They represent the buyer. They work for not the buyer. They represent the seller. They work for the seller. Their responsibility and loyalty and diligence is to the seller. So it's again kind of like the court analogy, going to court and expecting that prosecutor that's trying to put you in jail to also help keep you out of jail.
Right.
So
not going to work well.
Right.
You can't be on both sides and think that each person's getting an equal opportunity to get the best throughout that process, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I think that's part of the reason why that they've implemented this, right? They want to make sure a buyer has an opportunity to be represented by an agent, or potentially not. But that's, as we know, that doesn't go well at all.
No.
So now you're meeting someone face to face. You're having your buyer consultation. What's going to be, you think, the biggest hurdle to get over? Or how are you going to go through that process now,
Honestly,
opposed to before?
Getting them to meet me, because a lot of times, again, through COVID, the environment, just period. I mean, we're in an environment of instant gratification. Like, no, I want to see that house tonight at 2:00. Oh, that's in an hour. Yeah, can you show it to me? And in most cases, there's ways that we could have done that. Now it's not going to be so easy. It's going to be kind of like, okay, slow down a little bit. We've got to we have a certain process we have to follow. The buyer consultation is going to be, and I really hope that the buyers, it digests well for the buyers as well, because this is going to be the best opportunity for us to sit down, meet each other, and gain some trust. You can answer some questions. There's no, there's nothing being held back.
Yeah, you're building a
kind of thing.
rapport so that
And in
you
most
know
times,
you
if
wanna
I can
work with each other.
And I'll tell you what, in most times, and I know we've done these, but you and I have done these, I like to have the lender there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a it's designed so that it's a low stress environment, no pressure or anything like that. I want to meet you, and you should want to meet me before I go, gallivanting all over the counties for you.
Yeah.
Make sure you're comfortable with me, because if the goal is for you to purchase a house, 99% of the time, my estimation is 99% of the time, or I'd like to think so, buyers are going to need that representation. to help protect their interest, help protect them, make sure that everything inside the contract stays on schedule. All the,
You do it all the time, right? Just like I tell people all the time, been doing mortgages for 20 years. Do I know it all? I'd like to think I do, but I don't, right?
Yep.
But I'm looking out for the buyer's best interest or whoever I'm working with best interest. Same with you, right? You're going through this process. You want to convey to them, I'm looking out for your best interest. And if it's not me, it's got to be someone else, because if you walk into that house and you're just using that listing agent or that seller's agent, you're technically not really being represented the best way possible, because as we just said, they are representing the seller and they want the best to go for the seller as well.
Right.
Right. So you go through the process, you're meeting face to face. Now you have to have that conversation of, here's this contract, we're going to go through it. And when you sign it, what does that mean?
Well, one of the, we put in the contract, because there is the biggest thing in there, I guess, that should help make the buyer more comfortable, is there is a termination clause in there. And we do put a clause together that gives the buyer, I guess, a path of least resistance if they do want to not work with us. We want to make them as best as we can in an uncomfortable situation. We do want them to feel comfortable and let them know that look, you do have an out. This isn't an infinite binding contract. This is an agreement for us to work together. And look, now I've never had to do it. I have fantastic clientele, but technically I can fire the buyer.
Yeah.
If we have an unruly buyer that is just being unreasonable, belligerent, whatever, for whatever reason, we can agree to say, what, I think it's in both of our best interests that, from my perspective, that we don't work together. Same with the buyer. Buyer can say the same thing. Now, I don't have very many people that come to me and that I start helping. Actually, I don't think I can think of one.
I was going to say, I can't imagine that there's anybody that's come back to you and said, I don't like the way you work, or,
right.
This isn't going to work.
Again, not to make this into a fluff piece, but at the same time, it does hold our feet to a fire, so to speak, that, we're here to work diligently, and it's out in that public space, and knowledge that, look, if I want to leave this, if I want to not work with this agent, I don't have to. But in order for me to see houses and start going through the process with this agent or any agent, I have to have this in place.
And that's the biggest key. It's any agent, because, this isn't some pressure sale, right? You're not trying to pressure them in. You're not a car salesman saying you got to, sign this paperwork now. It's, I want to help you. I want you to like this house. If it's not this one, I'll take you to the next one. We'll come up with criteria.
Absolutely.
Right. And you want them to be happy, not this is some pressure to sign this document and now you're stuck with me for however long.
It's funny you say that, because I do get that look when I'm showing, at the beginning stages showing houses, and I'm just trying to learn the client, right? I'm just trying to kind of pick up what their likes or dislikes are. And quite frankly, I tell these folks a lot. I was like, look, it's easy to see what the likes are about a house or a property. I'm more interested in what didn't you like about the property, because something that you didn't like isn't the same as what someone else, because that dislike of yours is totally fine with someone else. So I'd rather learn the dislikes so I can help us craft and find that right house. And I tell them, I'm here to help you find the house you want, not the one you don't want.
Yeah. You don't want to get a call 6 months down the road or a year down the road. Why did I buy this house?
Yeah.
Right. You want them to be happy. You want them to refer you business, right? You want them to come back when they want to sell that one and move on to the next one.
Yep.
So my next question, and another kind of hurdle to kind of get over, is, so now you're looking at a listing. The buyer loves this house. You want to go take them to the house. How do we figure out the numbers with everything now, being that
numbers as far as the compensation piece?
Yeah, so the compensation piece, right? Because before that was listed and you could see what the compensation piece was.
Yes, that's another big thing that's changed.
So the big thing is going to be when that compensation isn't there, and I know it's going to affect me as a lender, because now I have to come up with different ways for the buyer to be able to cover that compensation if for some reason there is none coming from the selling side.
Right.
Right. So now it's not listed. Now you have to, what's that next hurdle you have to get over in order to make sure all the numbers work?
So right now, I mean, again, we're like literally day 3 into this. So a lot of this comes across as, guessing as far as like what could happen and just playing through all the different scenarios. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to prepare ourselves for, what different things can get thrown at us in coming out of this. But for now, it looks like the number one way is on a buyer's agent side. We got to call that listing agent. Listing agents, you got to pick up your phone. I understand you're busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. But we can't be too busy to not service our clients' best interest. Mm-hmm. We need to pick up those phone calls. We need to, convey, verbally. And I know a lot of agents are going to watch this and they're going to be like, oh, well, verbal doesn't mean anything. And I'm like, I know, but it's a starting point. Yeah. If you've got that in verbal, there's forms that the state has handed, that Maryland Association of Realtors has handed out for us to utilize to structure the negotiations surrounding that compensation piece inside the contract of sale or the offer of purchase. But that just, again, gives us just some groundwork so we can craft that correctly. And we understand that. Now, in the cases where I think where it's going to go off the rails a little bit is in the case where the seller doesn't want to offer any compensation up and is going to put that burden on the buyer. And it's happened. It's happened again, I hate to use COVID as that reference, but it is a pinnacle point in real estate history. Yeah. Much like the back in 2008. That being said, it's been a very, very much a seller's market. And the way I let my clients know is like, look, it is a seller's market. And there's not usually just one offer on that house that you love. There's multiple offers, and they're looking for the best terms. Part of those best terms is that compensation piece. And the seller knows that if people really want to buy this house, they're going to pick up a portion or all of that compensation piece so that it's not burdened on the seller. Again, I go back to it's all negotiable. So that is something that could be negotiated between the seller agent and the seller. So we don't know that until we pick up the phone and call it. Now, I know a lot of agents are worried that, well, I shouldn't say this. The component there was, or the notion there was to remove the knowledge of what that commission was, so that it wouldn't be, so it wasn't supposed to be such a big important part of the contract, which it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense, right? Because again, it makes it tough on you to figure out, right? It makes it tough on me as the lender because you've got this buyer that's pre-approved and they're ready to make a move, but maybe they only have X amount of funds. Right. Right. And now you've got this listing agent that's put a deadline for whatever time contracts have to be in. And if you're able to just go to the MLS or any site and see what that compensation is, we can figure it out, right? Okay, let's come up with a plan and we can game plan. Right. Yeah. I pull a tax bill, I know what the payment is. That doesn't just hit you out of nowhere and then, the payment's $100 more than you thought it was going to be or $100 less or affect the deal. So what also is coming out of that too is the notion that your buyers are going to just be like, look, I can't afford to pay you. Mm-hmm. And the notion coming from there is going to be, is they're going to instruct us, we don't want to see houses that aren't offering compensation. There is a reality there that's a very strong possibility. It's unfortunate because I do think that disenfranchises a certain segment of the buyers out there. Yeah. It really burdens them from achieving the American dream. The number one way, you can Google this anywhere, the number one way people build wealth, most people build wealth, is through the purchase of real estate.
That first home, that's the jumping off point for you building your wealth.
I've been doing this 20 years. There was only one segment in that 20-year time, 2008 through about 2010 or 11, where housing prices weren't on the up, right? They came down, but totally different market than we were in through COVID, and totally different now in circumstances, right? There's more people that need housing at this point in time, so that demand continues to stay up. And just like you said, you call that listing agent and there's no compensation coming from the seller, and you've got a first-time home buyer that just able to get in, right? They don't want to pay that rent any longer. Now you've got to figure it out. Does it eliminate them altogether? Not necessarily. It depends where rates are, because there's a way to potentially pay some costs with rates, right? Or how many offers are on that house. Maybe you can finagle something with your offer to kind of apply that within.
And that's an important part right there, because again, we go back to that, it's a buyer and seller agreement of compensation. So there's an actual form now that gets added into an addendum that gets added into the contract that outlines us asking for it. So just because they're not offering it doesn't mean we can't still ask for it and still get the compensation or a portion of it covered by the seller. It doesn't mean that. Again, it's just putting it all out there where they really overly abundantly want to convey it is all negotiable. And it's negotiable between the buyer and the seller, not agent to agent. I think that was the thing that the DOJ was trying to get rid of too, is that that they felt that was a negotiation between the buyer and seller, and it just seemed like it was shifting. It was a negotiation between the agents. Again, I can probably argue both sides of that. In an attempt to make more transparency, they've taken information out of the public space. That kind of is the opposite of transparency, in my opinion. But I do see the other side, the flip side of the coin. There are some definite benefits coming out of this.
It can go both ways, and like you said, like we were saying earlier, it's going to take some time. You're going to have to go through quite a few transactions to really get a feel for it. The listing agents really have to be on their toes, and as we said, answer the phone, send a message, figure something out to convey, because as you and I both know, you put a contract in prior to this. I try to call that listing agent to let them know my buyer is primed and ready to go. 9 times out of 10, they don't pick up. You got to send a text message or an email, and it's
and to different. That point too, how can you convey to a seller that you have a ready, willing, and able buyer when we don't know a portion of what you have to account for on the lending side of it? Does the buyer have to pay any portion or whatever towards the compensation? Does that now prevent them from purchasing that house? Right. So so
let's say, okay, so we call the agent. There's no compensation for the buyer side. Just walk me through. You still take the buyer to the house. They like the house.
We would have a conversation again, because in that arena, we're under the buyer agency agreement. So we've already negotiated what they are going to be responsible for. Should we find a house that offers less than or none as far as compensation goes? So we've already we've had that, again, that disclosure portion. Again, the good part about what's coming out of this, these changes, is making that buyer that much more aware of everything, and that in turn will lead us to that situation that you're talking about, and then that gets us into the thing saying, okay, this is one of those homes we talked about that does not offer compensation. As I told you up front, I'm going to try to negotiate that compensation in any deal we do, but I can't guarantee it. And it is going to potentially weaken our offer if there are multiple offers. And just have that, make them aware of that. And again, that starts diving into the whole thing of like, well, there's no point in going to see this house because I can't afford to buy the house and pay the agents or the buyer agent fee.
But you are saying through your negotiation, so there's no compensation on your side, you can, even though there's nothing written or there's no compensation, you can put within your contract that the seller pay that to you, even though they didn't agree with their agent. This is the offer we have. A house been sitting on the market 2 weeks.
Yeah, everything's negotiable.
We're going to put this offer in for $500,000, and part of that you have to pay my X%
to the seller. Oh yeah. Yeah, we can definitely try to negotiate that back into the deal, whether on the front side the seller isn't offering it, because in some cases the seller may be positioning themselves like, look, I don't want to post any offer of compensation out there because I want to see how much we can get without it. And I'm like, and as a seller agent, it's like, okay, that's one way to go. It's probably not the best way to go. But if that's what they want, the seller's the boss. If I'm working for the seller's the boss. But I know full well that we're probably going to get every contract coming in asking for a component of compensation or a certain amount of that. And then again, and just because let's say you have one really good contract come in, and just because they say a buyer's asking for X% in buyer agency compensation, the seller can go back and say, well, we won't do X, but we'll do Y, and then kick it back. Again, it's a negotiation between the buyer and the seller, and that's where it needs to belong. That's kind of what needs to be understood. And I think there's another component there where I think from an agent to agent perspective, I think there's going to be some sourness between some folks, because I don't know that a lot of agents are really diving that deep into this and grasping and fully understanding this. And it's not.
Seller's not going to be prepared. They're not going to know, right? They're not going to know what's going to happen. They're going to put their house on the market. House is going to be sitting for a couple weeks potentially, right? Because there's maybe no compensation in there, and they won't know why.
Right.
Because they haven't been explained the right way.
Right.
Of how this all works at this point in time. And like you said, it's a negotiation. So, and the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because even though there isn't the compensation listed, there is the potential to get it. But if the seller's already demanded to not put it in there, it's probably going to be tough to get that out.
Possibly.
Right?
And there's going to be there's definitely going to be those houses where it doesn't matter. The seller can do whatever the heck they want because that house is going to be in such high demand. And that's just one of those things. Again, I feel bad for the buyers that are, the first-time buyers or the lower-income buyers and things like that, because this is going to really, really negatively affect them, I think. And it's already challenging for them as is without having to saddle them with this.
Right. Yeah. Especially because the affordability piece of it all, right? Housing continues to go up, which makes it tough for the first-time buyers.
Oh, yeah.
I deal with them, it's a big part of my business, dealing with first-time buyers. A lot of them are just barely able to get in, but they realize it's going to build them wealth, right? Yeah. So they want to use all their money or as much money as they have just to get into the house. So now when you're adding in potentially more compensation or more into the mix, it's going to make it tough on them.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to make it tough. So do you think this will have any effect on the value of houses? Overall, the overall business.
I mean, it depends on the decisions the sellers make, right? If you're offering a compensation to the buyer's side in the sale, then I don't think much is going to change. I think you're going to see kind of a very normal, well, in current climate, you're going to see a normal transaction for the most part. Mm-hmm. But in the arena where you say, nope, I'm going to offer very little to no compensation, buyers are going to look at that and say, okay, well, that makes that house much less affordable for me. So maybe I don't want to see it. I can't compete in it. Basically, you're removing a segment of your buyer pool. So it's the law of supply and demand. Very ancient rule. There is no getting around it. If you take your house and let's say it's in very high demand, and you put something in place like that, say let's just go with you're not offering any compensation. Okay, so if you had 100 buyers on your house in normal times, regular compensation, whatever that looks like,
right?
But and then you take that component away. Now you go and say, okay, well, now I've just removed, 40%, 50%, 60% of my buyers now can't afford my house. So if you take the demand, that's the demand. Supply is definitely low. We know that.
Yeah.
But if you take the demand and you reduce the demand, it's going to reduce the price of the product, aside from, property and homes. So in effect, I do believe it will affect prices. And I think it's going to affect them negatively from the seller standpoint, just because of the simple fact that they thought that they were going to be able to keep that much more money in their pocket by not offering that up, when in fact they lost probably that much, if not more, because they have a fragment of a fraction of the buyers that they would have had under quote unquote normal,
right.
compensation.
And the only reason I bring that up is because a lot of the angst I have with the buyers that I deal with is the price of houses. Like we were saying, they've gone up significantly, right? Since 2019, since fourth quarter of 2019 till fourth quarter of 2024 coming up.
What are we at for average median home price here in Maryland? Like low 400s now?
Yeah. And it was about 285 for the longest, somewhere in that range.
Like in 2019-ish, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't until, again, I hate to put that timeline thing on there of the COVID, but once COVID came into the picture and the market just went bananas. I mean, it was like watching our national debt go up in price. It's the way housing was going up. It saddens me because I want to help, and I know you do too. You want to help people get into that house. You want to help them find that house and buy that house, start living that American dream. And when, it's $150,000 more expensive than it was, it's bonkers. I mean, I had people that were buying in 2020 or 2021. They'd hold it house for less than a year, and they were making some money on it, just because of how much the price of homes are going up. Yep. So again, it kills me to see the difficulties that they already have. Now they're going to have another.
So I think part of it is transparency, right? I think part of the reason for it is transparency, so that the sellers can see it's not all on them, right? And that there can be a negotiation, and they want to make sure everybody knows that. I think part of it is they're trying to somehow get prices to kind of come back some with higher interest rates where they are now, a little less demand. But as long as the supply isn't there, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because people need a place to live. And there's more people now, especially in this area, right? There's too many jobs. There's government jobs, the city. There's tons of opportunity here.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
In this area that we're in.
Tons of industry.
And the only reason I bring this up is because I have this conversation a lot with buyers, right? They're on the fence waiting for interest rates to drop, or they're on the fence waiting for prices to come down. And obviously we don't have a crystal ball. And if I did, I'd shake it and I'd tell you exactly what we could do and make sure we plan it to a T, right? Because the worst thing, like I said before, is to have someone, you take them, they buy the house, and in 6 months they don't like it, and then they're yelling at me because all of a sudden housing values have dropped or interest rates have dropped or whatever it is. But I think part of it is an attempt to somehow even things out and make prices more affordable, but
it's having the opposite effect.
It's having the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Totally having the opposite effect.
And I get those folks that come in and they want to go into the whole notion that, well, I'm gonna wait till prices come down. I'm gonna wait. One of two things. I'm gonna wait till prices come down because everybody keeps doom and gloom. There's a recession. Again, like you said, no crystal ball. We don't know, but the way most economists are reading it, the way the market looks, and everything else like that, at least in this Mid-Atlantic region here where we're at, Maryland, I can't see a world where that's actually going to happen anytime soon. Not saying it can't.
Right.
But again, I don't see it. So without that happening, then home prices are only going to do one thing, and that's going to go up. They're going to continue to appreciate, maybe at a slower rate than they were.
More the norm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? More the normal.
But there's
3 to 5% every couple of years, not 10% in a year, 20% in a year.
So I tell folks, I'm like, look, I understand what you're trying to do, and you're trying to play the housing market like the stock market. It's definitely a mistake to look at it like that, because of the simple fact that housing prices are only doing one thing in this region, and they're going up. They're not coming down. They're not leveling out. They're going up. The interest rate is historically not bad. But if you were waiting for rates to go back down and say, well, I'm going to wait till next year till rates go down. Okay. Well, if you tag another year onto that, let's say $400,000 house that you're trying to purchase, you tag another year onto it. Well, that $400,000 house today is $420,000 next year. And guess what? Let's say the things fall in your favor and rates go down by 2%. And now you're like, oh, cool. Now I'm going to go buy that house for $420,000, and it's going to be so much less expensive for me because I've got a low rate. No, because now you're not dealing with 2 or 3 other buyers that want to buy that house. You're dealing with 20 or 30 other buyers. So now that house that you think you can buy for $420,000 next year, well, A, you think you can buy it for $400,000 next year. You can't. No. It's going to be $420,000.
Yeah.
And now, okay, well, we can swallow that pill. We'll buy it at $420,000. No, this thing's probably going to sail past $500,000 because we got 20 or 30 people want, because everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
My advice, I know you do the same. You give the same advice: is buy the house now. It sounds like the most, and I tell people this is the most salesy thing I tell folks. And I am not trying to push anything on anybody. I'm trying to give the best advice I can possibly give to the consumers. But buy the house now. If the rates go down in a year, refinance. You're out of the game. You're not fighting 20 or 30 offers trying to buy that house in a year's time. If the rates go down, it's yours. You already started building your wealth. You're a year ahead of the game. You've got a year of appreciation already under your belt, so on and so forth. So it's just one of those things where waiting has never been a wise choice in real estate. It just hasn't.
Nope. And if rates come down, more than likely, that means housing prices are naturally going to come up because, as you said, there's that bidding war that happens and all these people come off the fence. Unless the only thing that can stop that is supply.
Right.
And where are we building in this area, right? Like I've heard, and I've seen it in Florida, Texas, new builds have been overbuilt. So certain areas they thought more people were going to come from other states, and they built the houses so quickly that now they have an abundance.
Oh yeah.
And those prices are potentially coming down, right? But in this area, where is all of a sudden all these houses going to come from unless all the, an influx of maybe foreclosures or short sales? And I know I get the call all the time. Where are all the short sales and foreclosures like there were in 2008? And I say it every time. 2008, we were doing loans that people shouldn't have got. Right. You're not verifying income. You're saying your credit's 740. You're a teacher and you're making $120,000 a year. And that was in 2008. We know that wasn't the case, but you're still able to get them that loan, right? We're not doing that anymore. Everything is verified. And especially as interest rates go up, that automated system and the underwriting gets much tighter because they want to make sure, because of 2008, that every loan that is done, there's a very good chance you get the payback, right? All those payments are made. So, and again, the only reason I bring this up is because I have this question, when is it going to drop? When is it going to drop? And
I get it too.
Yeah.
And I tell folks, I was like, there's no real indication here. You may hear about it, grumbles in this state or that state. But if those aren't the states you're trying to buy a house in, those states have no bearing on what we're doing. Like you said, this is a bit of a microclimate as far as a microeconomy, if you will, of a region. We have lots of government, D.C., all over the place. We have Baltimore is supposed to be touted as one of the leading biotech cities in the country. We just have tons of industry, tons of money in this area. There's just tons of money in this area, and that does make this area a little on the recession-proof side of things.
Yeah. So, do you think the biggest change for you personally, when you're doing business, Is it going to be the face-to-face? You're going to try to meet everybody more face-to-face? I know we offer it, but I feel like
there'll be a time where it becomes the norm, I think. And that's what you can't forecast, is how long is it going to take for this to become the new normal, right? Hopefully it doesn't take long. And we can get in front of these buyers and just help them understand the process better, help them realize our value and our benefit in the process, and what we do for it. Because the states don't require us to carry a license to do this because it's easy and because anyone can do it. There's a lot that goes into these transactions. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we have to put together for folks to make it a seamless transaction. And I know people think it's easy. It's just not.
No, it's not cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
Every person you work with is different. Every loan is different. Every house that you try to sell has its nuances that you have to kind of get through, right?
Yep.
Which is why it's important to make sure that person that you're working with knows that contract, and they're helping you negotiate things. And like you said, everything is a negotiation. It's not cut and dry, and they need somebody to help them through that, walk and hold their hand.
Yep.
A lot of times, one of the calls I hate to hear the worst is, we're going to do for sale by owner, and I'm going to buy this from my neighbor. Can you help us with the contract? And me being in the business as long as I've been in the business, I know a contract okay, but I'm pushing that to a realtor every single time, because I don't even want to be liable or caught, right?
Right.
Or not necessarily negotiating, but advising somebody the wrong way, because that's not my expertise. That's your expertise.
Right.
That's something you should be doing.
And I do the same with the lending side.
Right.
I'm like, look, this I can give you like high level, just basic, information or whatnot. But when it starts coming down to calculations and giving quotes and things like that, that's not my job. That's outside of my wheelhouse. I'm a real estate agent, and as such, that's what I'm supposed to act on behalf of, as is a real estate agent, not a lender, not a home inspector, not an attorney, definitely not an attorney. But yeah, so many times I think that even if we have the knowledge, there's verbiage in the contract. Again, there's everything in the contract almost. It states that we're not allowed. It is in the contract, black and white. We're not allowed to. So even if we have working knowledge of it or whatnot, we're not supposed to be speaking on behalf of that. Like, what do you think of this crack in the wall? I was like, maybe something may not be. We're going to have a home inspector come in here. He'll guide us on what we think we should do if he thinks it's serious enough to get a structural engineer out here, and so on and so forth. I mean, we'll go through those processes and whatnot, but I can't speak on behalf of that just by law.
Right.
Right.
So. How many, by this time next year, how many realtors do you think are going to fall out of the business because of this? And do you think it makes competition on your end
I think
easier?
I don't know what the exact numbers are. My gut says we're definitely going to probably lose some agents because I do train a fair amount of agents, and some of them don't last very long at all, and it's because they think, they watched a couple episodes on HGTV and they're like, well, I can do that.
Greatest/worst channel ever.
Yeah.
Love watching it and all the stuff they do. Great ideas, but puts the pressure on, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's an expert after you watch a couple shows.
Yeah. And it's not. There's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of time and energy that is expended trying to get yourself, situated in this industry. But I do think we're going to lose some. I don't know that we're going to be. I don't know that Maryland is going to suffer too bad because, like I said, we've been a buyer agency state since 2016.
And when you say buyer agency state, explain that just briefly, because there's other states where that's not the case.
Oh yeah,
right.
And you can and you hear them complain online a lot about what to do. I mean, it's like Chicken Little. The sky has fallen. It's not is falling. It has fallen.
Right.
So, and I feel bad for those folks that have to, because they're going to have an even bigger hurdle to overcome because their client base never even had that in place really.
Right.
But for us, a buyer agency state just basically means we're a state that has recognized and has mandated that a buyer agency be in effect for us to represent a buyer, or for a real estate agent, or for a broker to represent a buyer. That's a buyer agency state. So some of the states that don't have that, in technical terms, I mean, from our standpoint, from Maryland's standpoint, I mean, there's a ton of buyers going into these contracts unrepresented, and in those kind of situations, the buyer's quote unquote agent is actually a sub-agent of the seller. Again, each state has the way that they classify that and whatnot. And I don't want to dip my toes into other states' business, but for us, it
feels like the right thing to have right.
It does.
It should be. I mean, in my opinion, every state should have a buyer agency agreement.
They do now.
But they should have previously, right? Because
I
agree. I don't know.
I mean, this is the biggest purchase people are going to make. You know, the vast majority of people, this is the single biggest purchase that they're going to make. Why would you, just not take it seriously and just kind of try to go at it by yourself? Again, that court analogy.
Yeah.
Why would you? That prosecutor is trying to put you in jail. It's not a good idea to go represent yourself. You probably want to lawyer up.
And I don't want to go to jail, so I want to.
I know,
right? I want to have somebody there to represent me. Just like I don't want to get in trouble with this house. I want somebody that's an expert, knows the contract, and not only that, you've walked through a lot of houses. And I'm not saying you're a home inspector, but you can point out certain things that, if you're not represented, they're looking to just sell the house,
right?
So
or just buy a house. They don't know, and a lot of the first-time home buyers, they don't know what to expect.
Correct.
They don't understand that. Honestly, I think some of them they know, but it's not on the forefront of their mind that just because this is a house for sale doesn't mean it's a good house for sale. And we have to get to that point of discovering, is this not only the right house, but is the house a good one, quote unquote, for you to purchase based on a lot of varying parameters as far as the safety, the health, structure, anything that go along with it, mechanical, those kinds of things. And we have we're aligned with the professionals that that are going to get us to the finish line, and or cause us to be able to get out of purchasing that house.
Yeah.
And move on so that we can go find the house that is right for you, that's the right fit. The mechanicals are in place, and everything else like that your wants and needs are. It's all there for you.
So if you had one piece of advice to give all the buyers listening to this right now, right? They're sitting in front of their real estate agent that they're potentially going to choose, and you're walking through that contract.
It's an interview. Treat it like an interview.
There's no pressure. You don't have to sign right there on the dot.
But again, if you want to see that house right away, it's going to be a little difficult for you.
Which is another thing. But you should be more prepared, right?
I think the biggest piece on this is that I think I'd like buyers to understand that, look, we're professionals. We're not door-to-door salesmen. You shouldn't feel like someone's pressuring. If you are talking to someone, an agent or anything like that is making you feel like that it's a pressure situation and everything else like that, then you may want to, interview them a little bit more stringently.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of agents out there. I like to think that, the real property guy, my team of realtors are, the upstand, the more on the side of upstanding, that aren't here to pressure you in anything. We're just here to help you. We're here to help you find and help you get that house purchased and make your dream come true. I do believe that I think a lot of times buyers are going to be like that, are going to be in disbelief that this is actually a law that they actually have to sign this contract in order just to go see a house. So I think that's going to be
I think that's the biggest
big
hurdle
takeaway
right now because
that
it's
that
more
it
of a
is.
sale. Like they think you're trying to sell them on something, and it's not the case.
No, it's a representation thing. It's just like same thing. You want to hire an attorney to go represent you in court. You're going to be signing, contracts with them, with certain agreeances, certain guidelines and things like that. That's outlining the duties of the attorney, your duties, and those kinds of things. It's a very similar scenario. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
I appreciate you joining me today, man.
I feel like we went over a lot of good information.
I hope
everybody
so.
should be less pressured, right? Or know that
Hopefully
agents out there.
yeah.
Well, I hope they realize that when an agent wants to talk over that contract with them now, it's not to pressure them. It's to be in the right, do abide by the laws and do the right thing and make sure they're being represented and not just walking into something blindly.
Oh, no, 100%.
So
100%.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it. Can't wait for the next one.
Definitely. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. I definitely personally appreciate it. We'll see you guys.